Hello, welcome to episode 23 of the Snowboard Instructor Podcast. Today we have Basi trainer and editorial staff for Whitelines, Rob McCreath. In this interesting episode, we talk to Rob about what made him stand on a snowboard for the first time, his road to become a Basi trainer, what made him work for Whitelines, and his involvement with Ultimate Ski School.
This episode is brought to you by the National Snow Show, a UK-based event at the NEC in Birmingham. It is held on the 23rd to the 24th of October, so if you like anything ski or snowboard related and want to update yourself on the new gear and happenings within the industry, then come on down. For a limited time, we are giving away 100 free tickets for this amazing event. So just use the code INSTRUCTORPOD when clicking the link in the description below.
Hope you have a fun time listening to this episode, and see you in the next one.
Yeah, but how's things been anyway with like working this year for you?
Yeah, it's been a funny one, eh? I think I haven't been out to the Alps at all, actually. So my last, pretty much a year to the day, in fact, was the last time I was in France. I've been pretty much in the UK since then. So obviously, the instructor work pretty much dried up. The Basi work as well, more or less stopped. And luckily, I kind of kept on with Whitelines. We had a pretty busy summer, so that kind of kept me focused. But I had a few weeks in Scotland just last month. I took a bunch of split boards up to my home or my parents' home, and it was so good to get back. It was really good snow for Scotland, late season spring snow. The resort was obviously still shut, but there was like a whole crew of people heading up there every day, just riding the front of the Cairngorms, but also going over the back where there's some like wicked free ride terrain.
You've still got some snow up there as well, right?
It holds really late this year especially. Like they've had, it's such a shame because it's been one of the best snow years they've had for a long time. Good for the locals, right? They had it all. But I left Scotland on like the 7th of May and it was puking it down. Like people were getting powder days still. It was just crazy.
Yeah, I saw like a load of my friends doing like a load of backcountry, like I think last week, just like going up Ben Nevis and just snowboarding down, hitting some stuff there. And it's ridiculous how they've still got snow up there.
Like in those gullies, it holds for like a really long time. And actually, this is almost like the time when it comes into condition. This is when a lot of people go and ride those couloirs and gullies because Scotland gets such wild conditions that it's really not that safe for most of the season. But late spring, early, even right like now into almost early summer, it can be really, really good.
That's good, man. Awesome. So. Let's get on with questions, Rob. First question, of course, like we talked to everyone about, like, where did you start snowboarding? Like, what was your first lesson and how did you kind of get into the sport, man?
Yeah, so I think I was really lucky. I grew up in Abbeymoor, or just a small village outside Abbeymoor, which is in the Scottish Highlands. It's super close to where the Basi office is, in fact. And so both my mum and dad were skiers, and I think from like the age of 4, I was on skis. So I got into it from like a super young age, and they can remember. They always tell me that my first day on skis, like, got to the end of the day, and there was kids kind of like throwing their gloves, having tantrums, and crying, and I was just like, that was the best day ever. But, like, even on skis, So it started like for a pretty young age for me, and then I think I was about 10 when I got into snowboarding. Got my first setup from. This has gone now, but it was a snowboard shop called North 57, and it was like an institution in Scotland. It was just this proper, like, cool snowboard shop run by the snowboarders of the town. I got my first setup, and then I joined the snowboard club there, like the Cairngorm Snowboard Club, and every weekend I'd be up there riding with my mates, and guys like Jamie Trinder, who went on to the Team GB and rode for Battalion. There's just a really cool crew of us, kind of age 10, 11, 12, riding every weekend. And we had like some amazing coaches as well. There was one coach, Hugo, his name was, and he just got everyone frothing, like whatever the conditions, because Scotland is going to throw you like horizontal rain and wind and whiteouts and ice, and every day we were all just like loving it. It was super cool to get get going at that age. I guess I like looking back now, I take it for granted because so many people I teach or people who come for lessons, they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and like to learn at that age was super lucky, super fortunate to have that opportunity. And then I guess at school, again, growing up in that area, we were really lucky. We got the chance to, through the winter, like one day a week, we'd get to go up to the mountain and get to go riding. So I think everyone had to do skiing unless you'd had enough snowboard experience that you could go down a red run or something. So I remember me and two of my friends were the only ones allowed to snowboard, and like the other 30 kids were all skiing, and they hadn't organized a snowboard instructor for us either. So like we rocked up and everyone's there at the lineup for the lessons. No snowboard instructor turns up, and the teacher's like, right, one strike and you guys are out, but I'm going to go and let you ride for the day. So meet back at lunch and just go ride. And like the three of us just charged around all day, 12 years old, just like, or no, probably a bit older, maybe like 14, 15 by then. We were just loving it. And like, I mean, the cliche is old about skiing being a bit lame or whatever, but that really reinforced it for me back then when we were just like plowing, charging around the mountain, and then you kind of go past the skiers working on their plow turns on the green slope. So yeah, so that was cool. I got really lucky just growing up where I did and having access to that, I guess. And then from there it sort of progressed. I mean, I didn't ever consider it as a career option or anything like that until much, much later, but I left school when I was 17 and just kind of worked a summer job and then saved up and flew out to New Zealand. I'd read this really cool feature, and it was in a Whitelines mag actually. When I was 16, and it was all about the resorts around New Zealand and a big trip that they did there. And I thought, I'm going there. That's what I want to do. So yeah, 17, packed up, me and my cousin and a couple of friends. We headed out there for 6 months. And looking back, man, it was carnage. Like I was a child, I can't really believe we had a lot of close calls, to be honest. But we bought this beaten up old camper van, and we just did a road trip for a few months, and then parked up in Wanaka, and we got a couple of jobs, cleaning toilets basically. But it gave us a chance to go and ride up at Cardrona and Treble Cone and Snow Park as well, which used to be there. It's gone now, but basically just one massive snow park right in the heart of the Southern Alps in New Zealand, which is, it was a mecca for snowboarding. So just to go up there any day of the week, you'd see the Burton team, you'd see the Salomon team, you'd see Travis Rice, Sean White. It's like a theme park for snowboarding. So yeah, that was kind of my early experience with it, and I guess that's kind of what got me hooked on it.
Yeah. So going back from the Canigorms as well, how was the community back then, and was it pretty more, of course, definitely ski more focused in terms of how it was back then, but how were the bars, how were the people there, how was the community overall?
It's still going, man. There's still a really cool community there, and I think probably in the 70s and the 80s was the golden age for Aviemore for the ski and snowboards, or the ski scene at least. But I was just so lucky to be a part of that. I mean, everyone sort of has a bit of bias if they grow up there, but I genuinely have had some of the best days riding of my life in Scotland. And the free ride terrain especially is just so underrated. And there's, I don't know, you probably see on Facebook groups, there's such a strong community of riders and backcountry riders, just pushing it out there. And yeah, it's really strong, man. It's still going strong, of course. Obviously it's suffering a bit with low snow, and the infrastructure is just not quite the same as what you get in the Alps. It is pretty ghetto in some respects, but for me it's home, and I'll always love it. And yeah, I'll always fly the flag for Scotland and encourage people to check it out at least once, especially if you're with Basi. That's where the organization started basically. So yeah, it's like a pilgrimage back to the Mecca.
I think everyone in the UK that has snowboarded for long does know that the Scottish Highlands are sort of, not as good as you'd compare. If you're comparing it to literally anything else, you sort of got a good thing a bad thing coming, but it's sort of its own little thing. It's very, I don't know, it's very Scottish.
Yeah, I think honestly, if you've not been, my advice would be set the bar as low as you possibly can. Because you could show up and it's just grass and rain and wind with like a strip of a piste and like everyone's fighting over it. But if you strike it right, if you do line and the stars align, it's so good. It's just like such a cool place to ride, and like it challenges you. Like I don't think it's nice to ride super wide, pristine groomers all the time and like well shaped parks, but actually like there's a lot to be said for riding in conditions where you've got like pockets of powder and wind lips and like scrapey ice and you're ollieing over rocks and riding through heather. Like it's pretty cool.
I think that, that is definitely like, that's what makes it fun, is having a resort that challenges you, and it's not like your classic, as you said, a pisted run with maybe that 1 or 2 powder bed day. You kind of want to like have a run where you do get challenged and you want to go, all right, let's maybe try and stick outside of that white ribbon of death where all the other people are, and working your way from there, hopping over. And, I think that's when you have the most fun out of it, is trying to adapt and work with the conditions that you're riding with, which is,
oh yeah, awesome. It keeps you on your toes, that's for sure.
Nice. And going from, after you've done New Zealand, was there any subsequent kind of, trips and other kind of holidays you did beforehand?
Nah, so I think, there was the odd trip and returning back to Scotland, but I think basically I got back from New Zealand and I kind of went to uni just as like a default setting, not really thinking about it, not questioning it too much. And, it was fine. It was what it was. Probably like rushed the decision and didn't really think as to why I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And I remember it was by my fourth and final year. I was just like living in the library, just hating it, to be honest with you. And kind of just missing going snowboarding and not having that kind of, not having any trips lined up. So I actually just, I don't even remember how it happened. I think I was just bored one night and I Googled like snowboard instructor. Basi obviously popped up, and I saw there was a level 1 running in Braehead, which was really close to where I was studying. And I thought, okay, I'll give that a go. Like, yeah, I can take a week off uni. That sounds pretty cool. So I went along, and like that, that was where like the instructor pathway started for me. I had Ben Kinnear as my coach at the time, and like he's, I don't know if people have mentioned him. I think Dave's obviously mates with him, probably spoke about Ben. Like he's like the epitome of a snowboard coach. Like just, he's like such a good technical rider, super inspirational, motivational, like just makes you a better rider just being around him and having him sort of give you little bits of feedback. And he kind of sort of, I guess kind of opened my eyes a bit as to what like being a snowboard instructor could be and what it was. And we passed that. I think everyone passed that first week actually on the level 1. But I do like distinctly remember after that course thinking, man, that was cool. Like being a trainer, like what he was doing was rad, but just being a snowboard instructor in general, I was like, shit, maybe this is something I could actually do. Maybe this is something I could make work for more than, I actually, when I did my level 1, I had no intention of working as an instructor before I went into it, which seems a bit weird. I think most people go in thinking like, yeah, we'll get the 1, then I'll get the 2, then I'll do a season in the Alps or whatever. I just went in thinking, I wouldn't mind going snowboarding right now. It's September and I'm hating uni right now. So I did it. And that kind of just totally shifted my focus after that and kind of set me on the pathway, I guess.
Nice. How did you find the level 1, by the way?
It's good, man. Like it's really funny. I think my experience of it just opened my eyes to sort of how much there is to snowboarding. It's not just heels and toes. I mean, it is ultimately, but then it's also like breaking everything down. Having someone break your riding apart, like when you go into a level 1, you're fresh, you're new to it. Like you have no sort of preconceived notions of what kind of rider you are. And to be honest, you probably think you're pretty good, right? Like, yeah, I can do this. I'll go and become an instructor. And then someone is just like, right, I'm going to teach you literally how to stand still on a snowboard again, because you can't even do that. I was like, what the fuck? Okay. So having it totally broken down and built back up was an amazing experience. And like your pride takes a bit of a hit for the first few days, but by the time you get to the 5th day, you're like, okay, yeah, I see this now. Like I get like the foundations of writing and I understand what I'm doing a lot more. But yeah, it's interesting. What I've generally found, I don't know if you boys can vouch for this as well, but like you're at your most confident as a snowboarder before you're level 1. And from that point on, it just slowly chips away, and you realize you're not as good as you think. And that only gets worse the further you go. Right now, like, I'm just like, yeah, I'm always so critical of my riding and being like, I'm really not good at this. But
yeah, it was a great thing. I was speaking to is like I get this every single time. Is like every turn I do, I always analyze it. I'm like, oh yeah, that turn was shit. That turn was all right. You know what? That turn was pretty good. And you just kind of like do it every single time. And then you look back up the slope and you're just looking at your line and you're just like, you know, maybe I could have done this better. Maybe I could have done that better. And you just do it. If you're doing like those kind of drills and exercises, you kind of start to really analyze it too much.
I did. Oh, there's such a risk of that. I know, like, I'm guilty of that sometimes. I think the harder thing is just to switch off and just to ride. Like, I'm better at it now, but yeah, there was a few years where I just couldn't make a turn or do a trick or do anything without, you know, like it'd be a perfect open powder field, and I get to the bottom and be like, how's my body positioning for this? And I'm like, who gives a, like, it doesn't matter, you know?
It doesn't matter at all, man.
Like, yeah, you're not being judged or anything. You're just constantly over-analysing yourself, and you just, it is what it is. I think sort of freestyle has helped. So getting into freestyle a bit more with Sam Smith, because obviously he was on your level 2. He says hi, by the way. I saw him earlier. He's helping me to get my freestyle a bit better, and it's kind of nice just to do a trick and just not overthink it, where I'm like turning and carving and stuff and constantly thinking about how my feet should be on those turns, instead of just going, oh, I'll just throw myself on the box or pipe and rail. And
I think the best thing for that is, what I found at least, is just to scare myself, like scare the shit out of myself on something, whether it's in the backcountry or in the park. And like, you very quickly don't have time to be thinking about your inputs and outputs. You're just doing it, and it either works or it doesn't. You kind of, get back into that flow state, I guess.
So after that, like, initial level 1, Rob, what did you go straight into? Did you do some more trips? Did you have a look at like applying for your local mountain? Like, where did you go from there?
Yeah, so after the level 1, like I say, that was a bit of a turning point where I was like, all right, I need to get a lot more time on snow. I need to figure out a way to make this work for a job, really, and like a way that I can do this year round. So yeah, again, kind of got saving the money, and I went to Argentina and Chile, so like down to South America for a season. And again, a bit like when I was in New Zealand, it was just a case of scrubbing toilets and cleaning hostels and, you know, hitchhiking from one town to the next. But it was really just a chance to ride and get on snow, and just to go somewhere new and somewhere that seemed really cool, and a place that was maybe a bit more off the beaten track from most people who kind of go between like Europe and Canada, maybe, or North America. So that was rad. It was pretty fearsome. Like, the conditions there are like Scotland on steroids.
Oh, really?
Oh man, like amazing terrain and some great days. But the first day I had there, it was like 80-mile-an-hour winds or something stupid like that. And me and my friend, who's also from Aviemore, who was with me, were like, yeah, we can do this. Come on, let's go up. It's fine. It'll be just like home. And the chairlift derailed when we were on it. So it was just like ended there, for like 6 hours. And then the ski patrol kind of came down one chair at a time and threw blankets over everyone and gave them flasks of mate, which is like this, it's like this really strong herbal green tea that they drink there. So we were just sitting on this chair for hours, like waiting to get rescued from it, which is a good baptism of fire for the first day riding in South America. But yeah, I mean, I loved it, and it kind of, I think what it did was it gave me a chance just to ride every day without too much of a focus. Just do it for the fun of it, I guess. And then I came back and went pretty much straight into my level 2 after that. Well, season that was with Renell in Tignes. So that was good. The level 2, you know, again, like with all the exams, it was just this big step up, and kind of going there after the level 1, after a season in South America, being like, all right, I got this. And then day 1 with Renell, I'm like, oh, I don't have this at all. I'm a long way off the mark here. But it was great. You know, Renell's obviously like super experienced coach, and like bit of a taskmaster, you know, kind of never once let me get complacent with it, and never once made me feel like I was getting there. It was just push harder. And then it was actually on the final day, she said I'd passed it like 3 days ago, but just didn't tell me. Which you guys have maybe had that same kind of experience. It's so worth it, right? Like you get 3 days of progressing, beyond the level and just cementing those habits. So yeah, that's where I got into level 2. And then from there it was going to Scotland. It was like, I think I had 3 seasons in Scotland, again, teaching in like insane conditions, but also like, you go through the 1 and 2 and you have the Basi manual and the central theme and you're like, all right, okay, I know how to do this now. And the first lesson I had was, I met the social worker first, and I was like, oh, hey, are you here for a snowboard lesson? She's like, no, I'm not, but this kid is. Instead, like, can you coming for the lesson? I was like, okay. She's like, I'm gonna have to be with him if you don't mind. I was like, what? Literally the first lesson I'd done since my level 2, like kind of fresh off the exam. And I mean, the kid, he came from like pretty disadvantaged background, and he was just not interested. Like, this was part of a charity thing. He'd been brought for a lesson and he was absolutely hating it. He hated me. He hated the mountains. He hated snowboarding. Every time he fell, he would just like punch the ground and like light a cigarette and sit there for 10 minutes. And like, we were not making progress. And I had like 4 days of this, I think. And I was thinking, man, like no amount of heel side slips gonna get this kid to like me, But it was really interesting because I think I kind of had to throw the rule book out the window and just, it wasn't about teaching him how to snowboard. It was literally just, how can I get this kid to just respond to me and just for us to have a conversation and for him to slowly like build the confidence to try things and not be afraid to fail them. And anyway, like, very long story short, he like picked it up by the 3rd or 4th day, and he was starting to link his turns, and he was getting into it, and you could see his confidence just like shoot up, knowing that he'd kind of done this on his own, and he was able to get down the mountain, and he was loving it, And it was a few years later, actually, he reached out to me on Instagram or something to say that he just finished his level 1 snowboard instructor course. He's now working as a snowboard instructor, which is super cool. I haven't seen him since, but be cool to, I don't know if he's going through the pathway or what. It'd be wicked to meet him again on like a level 2 or 3 exam. But yeah, I mean, that was a wicked experience.
Oh man, that'd be sick. And how did you, like, just kind of want to go a bit more into detail in terms of how did you really kind of connect with him? How, like, what did you do, or was it just was it him that kind of really had that shift in mindset?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't honestly know, to be honest with you. It'd be better to speak to a psychologist or an adaptive instructor about something like that. I think it was just a case of there was that dynamic of me initially being the instructor, and this is me telling him what to do, and him being told this is how you snowboard. And I think that environment hadn't worked for him before. It didn't work with authority, and it was a case of just breaking it down a bit more so that I could be like, if I was having a shit day, I could just tell him, like, man, I'm exhausted. Like, I don't really want to be here either. Should we go and get a hot drink down at the bottom, and we'll maybe come back to this, and just slowly break down that wall and just get to know him as a person, because he was a really funny kid. Like, he had a wicked sense of humor, and he was a pretty smart kid, and he was a pretty sensitive kid, and he just lived in this world where he'd been exposed to quite a lot of dark stuff, I guess, from a young age, and he wasn't going to let someone in, especially some dickhead who's fresh off his level 2 with his instructor jacket, like, hey, how are you doing? So it just took a while to break that down, but yeah, it was cool, man. And like, it's weirdly like the most memorable lesson or lessons I think I've taught to this day, just to know that, like, not only by the end of the 4 days he was riding, but by 2 years after that, he's doing his level 1 instructor exam. It's pretty cool.
Oh, I love it. And kind of going from that, did you kind of really think about doing some more? What are the what are the little stories in terms of your teaching experience that you kind of had before you really moved on to like doing the big boy stuff?
The big boy stuff.
Yeah.
I think like Scotland was just a really, really like cool learning curve, because there's not a flat gradient on a single Scottish mountain. Like, there's no sort of nursery beginners. I mean, there are, but they're really not not like you'd find in the Alps, for example. And you're just constantly adapting. Like one day you do have a perfect run, and the next day it's been raining overnight and half of it's gone, and you've got a quarter pipe. So constantly figuring out how to adapt. And as much as the Basi, sort of the central theme and the teaching progression that we have, those tools that we have are great, and they do work in a sort of perfect environment. You guys will, I'm sure, agree, you very quickly realize those are the bones of it, and you have to flesh that out to make something that's actually going to be a working session for somebody. And I mean, so like one example, again, that first season in Scotland, I was teaching this couple, beginner snowboarders, and they showed up, and it was going to be a pretty straightforward lesson, but I don't know how or why, but they came with their dog, like this little Jack Russell, and they were like, "Do you mind if Milo joins us?" So I was like, "No, all right." Okay, sure. So this dog shows up for the lesson. It was hilarious. They're sitting on the bums. I'm trying to talk them through this heel side side slip, and the dog's just sitting there with his tongue out watching me as well. I'm thinking, this is so weird. What the fuck? And yeah, like, you know, like you're thinking through the toolbox, right? We're on heel side slip. Keep your head up. Oh, right, snowball. And I'm like, guys, I'm gonna chuck a snowball. Yeah, I just want to see if you can catch it. Keep your head up as you're riding down and see if you can keep your balance. So I'm doing that like such a clown, chucking these snowballs, and the dog is just jumping and biting at them. And I'm like, this is the worst lesson ever. Like, what's going on? Yeah, it was a good laugh, but I think they got turning in the end. In fact, they did, because I remember watching them that afternoon and the dog just like charging after them. So they obviously got it. But yeah, it's a bit of a funny experience, that one.
Who would have thought you would have a dog on a slope? It's like, I mean,
yeah.
Tell you what, luckily it wasn't like you didn't throw your gloves instead of snowballs. Because if it was your gloves, you just wouldn't see it again.
Yeah, be shredded on the slope somewhere. I know.
Oh, that's cool, man. And going from that, you know, talking about like quickly through the level 3 and 4 stuff, you know, going from that level 2 to 3, you know, did you see that was that big jump beforehand? And, you know, how did you find doing the level 3 content?
Yeah, I mean, it is a big jump up for sure. Anyone who's gone down the level 3 route I'm sure would agree. The 2 to 3 it's a big step up. And I think, you know, I just kind of went all in, to be honest with you. I was, I'd done like 3 seasons in Scotland, and I think I'd done a season in New Zealand and Japan, I think, by then. And then, I hadn't done the Japan season yet, but I just kind of thought, right, I'm going for this. Like, I'm going to go all in. I'd like to make this more of a career. I'd like to have the opportunity to work in more places, and yeah, let's go for it. So I did, and I think I basically signed up to every exam in the course of one season, and I think I passed every exam apart from the level 3 tech, which for me now, this is the thing. So with all the time teaching in places like Scotland or like pretty sort of small resorts in New Zealand, like it's great for your teaching experience, because you very, very quickly realize that you have to just adapt to so many different things, and you kind of learn the teaching side of it pretty well. But the technical side, obviously, you're not riding wide open pieces to work on your carving or big kickers, or you're not getting consistent snowfall. So for me, the tech was, it was like such a huge step up. And I remember the first day of the tech, looking around the group and just being like, I should not be here. Like, I just knew it from the start. And I think one of the trainers kind of said to me quite early on, like, I think you already know you're not going to get it this time. He's like, that's fine. You are here. Take the pressure off and just push yourself just to see where you can get in the next week. So yeah, I mean, I failed that one comfortably. Like, I wasn't close. But what's interesting is, like, you know, I think Dave was saying in his interview a couple of weeks back that he found the mountain safety and the European mountain security exams like a pretty tough environment to be in, and being a snowboarder, you're kind of already on the back foot. And what's interesting for me, like, I felt that a lot of the experience I had being, you know, like a lot of hiking, climbing, and just being in the Scottish mountains, it actually equipped me really well for that exam. And those were the exams that I really enjoyed, and I felt like I did really well in. So I think that's true of everyone, whoever you are, when you're going through the instructor pathway, there is something that will catch you out. It could even be the written paper. I know some people who just could not get the written paper over the pass mark, but they would pass the technical with flying colours. But yeah, for me, it was the tech. So I failed that one. And then Kev was my assessor, Kevin Edwards. And he was like, what's your plan from here? What are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to get really drunk tonight. And then tomorrow I'm going to figure out a plan for the next year so I can come back and pass it. And I'll see you again this time next year. And he was like, all right, sweet, go and do that. So then I literally did just have a year of instructing, but every free hour on the mountain, I would just to be honest, I almost took one of it out for myself. I can't say I'd necessarily encourage someone to do the same, but it was so like, what do I need to do? And being really honest with myself and saying, right, I'm shit at switch and I'm shit at freestyle, but I'm pretty good at variables and I'm pretty good at carving and I'm pretty good at steep. So I'm going to stop wasting my time doing the things I enjoy, and I'm going to focus on the stuff that I need to improve. And like, in fact, the second year when I went back to resit the tech, I went out 4 weeks early before the exam with a friend, and we just rode every day. We rode all the slopes that were being assessed on. We filmed each other. We did like video analysis at night. It was absolutely awful. Like I've never not wanted to snowboard so much in my life. I really I can't believe I let myself get to a point that I felt that way about riding. But I think that's just how I work. Like I put myself under, I set like that goal, and it's like, right, it might not be fun, but I'm going to make sure I get to that level. And it doesn't work for everyone. I'm not saying that's a template for success at all. Because if I'm being honest, I don't know how I would have reacted if I failed it that time round after putting all that work in. Who knows? But anyway, it didn't matter because I got the 3 tech that second year back, and it was a good feeling to show up on day one and be like, you want to see switch? Right, cool. Where should we go? And just like, I mean, in fact, Kev's feedback on the first day, which stays with me for some reason, I got to the bottom of the run, and instead of him like fist bump, like, hey, that looked good, he just went, your switch used to be shit last year. And I was like, is that the feedback? I guess that's all right then. But yeah, so it was a pretty full on year, and to be honest, like every part of my riding improved. I'm really stoked that I did that. And yeah, I think after that, I kind of thought that's the biggest hurdle that I'm over now. So the level 4, surprisingly, actually was just really enjoyable. I just loved the whole process. I think I learned from that level 3 tech reset, like that's not a good way to approach something. Putting yourself under that much pressure and making it so like task focused is not the way to get better. You get better by just doing it for the love and riding with like-minded people. So the level 4 was amazing, like an amazing year for me, where myself and James Blogg, who's also one of the instructors at Ultimate, and Jenny Jones, who I'm sure you know from the British snowboard scene, the 3 of us all went out to Tignes in France, and we rented an apartment together, and we were all going for the level 4 that year, as well as a few other people based out there, and it was just, it was so fun. Like the races were ridiculous and hilarious, like the weirdest experience of my life. We drove for like 16 hours to the Czech Republic and did these it's like races. I had no idea what was going on. I showed up on my board and people are there with like waxing stations, and they've got like their backup board there, and the coach is whispering in their ear, and I'm just there like in my baggy jacket with the same board I'd been riding with all season, and I hadn't probably waxed for a week. Like, oh no, what am I doing? But the thing with those races, they're so cowboy. The start line that's where the action's at, and if you can get a few spoilers in, or if someone like takes a bit of a wonky line, like it's wide open. So I got lucky with him. I think I won the first 3 heats on the first day, which basically got me the points I needed.
Yes, so, Rob.
Well, that was fluke. I'm not putting that down to anything. But so when actually it was Malcolm who you've interviewed. He convinced me that night because he was there racing. He's like, mate, you've already got the points. You've done. You've got it. You've passed. So I was like, well, sweet. Well, we're in the Czech Republic. We should probably have a few beers, eh? So I ended up getting pretty tanked that night, I think. And the next day realized that you had to score points on both days, or that like it was an average of the two.
Oh, no.
Like, oh God, I'm not. And then like I had an absolute shocker. I think the second day with a bit of a stinking hangover, the first heat that I was in, I like preempted the gate opening and basically like nose rolled over it like a false start. So I was disqualified, and then I was like, the heat was really on. But yeah, I think, I don't know, I got like a second place in one of them and got the points, luckily. But yeah, that level 4, the whole pathway for that was, for me at least, it was a really, really fun, cool experience.
And may I ask, what did you do for your written exam, Rob, as well? If you can remember it, mate.
Yeah, I can't remember the title, but it was basically something along the lines of the importance or the impact of nonverbal communication. So the idea that, I think, depends where you read, but apparently like you form a first impression of somebody in under like 1 second. It's like 0.7 seconds. Like that is all it takes for you to very quickly form a first impression of someone. And then beyond that, it's all the other stuff, like the intonation or the rhythm of your voice or your body language, how you use your hands as gestures. I realize I've got like the most monotonous voice in the world, so I was kind of using myself as a case study. But like, yeah, just looking outside the box, that you can be a really strong technical writer, and you can also be a really good teacher that can analyze someone's writing, break it down, and say what they need to do. But it's how you say that that's going to actually affect the bigger change. So, you know, being able to read that person, being able to tell, is that person, are they nervous? Are they cocky? Are they like getting bored? What is it? And then how can you then communicate to that person to create that rapport, to like get them engaged, and to sort of create that sense of them wanting to improve. So I think it was on that, which, yeah, I haven't read it since I submitted it, to be honest, but it's in the archives somewhere, I'm sure.
It's somewhere floating around.
Yeah.
Mate, that's great. And going from the level 4, like, what other like little bits and bobs did you find tricky, or anything that stood out in doing your ISTD?
I think, well, actually, for me, it was what was quite a big learning curve was going into the trainer selection after that, where I kind of, after I got my level 4, I was like, oh, it's done. The pressure of the Basi exam is over. Like, see you later. I can just get back to writing and enjoying it and doing it for the love and doing my job. And then the email came through that there was trainer selection was up. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went for it. I mean, yeah, do you know, one of the biggest things for me that kind of always has held me back with wanting to do these things, I get like really, really bad nausea. Like every single day on my level 3, I've threw up. Every single day on the trainer tech, I wake up and throw up. Like, even when I was doing the level 2 exam with you, Alex, I was, the last couple of days, just like secondhand stress from all the students who are nervous. Like anything that really affects me, and I get like super nervous, and I'm just like, bleh. So I was like, oh, am I really going to go through this again? And I was like, yeah, it'll be different this time. Don't worry, you got nothing to prove. It's fine. And sure enough, I turned up and just immediately started throwing up again. So there's, yeah, but it was a cool experience. We had a really tricky week for that trainer selection, where the mountain effectively shut for 2 out of the 3 days, or 3 out of the 4 days. I can't remember what it was. Just crazy high winds, and basically had to run the trainer selection from a hotel conference room, which was pretty weird. And everyone was having to adapt. You know, the examiners are suddenly like, right, we've got to fill 3 days worth of content to figure this out. So we ended up doing like all of the teaching assessment there in those 3 days, and then myself and another friend of mine, we got through to a subsequent technical week, which was like a month later. So what I thought was going to be like 3 or 4 days of hell turned into like 6 weeks of hell, where I was just so nervous the whole time. But like it was also a blessing in disguise, because I think it gave me time just to go and write and get my head in the right space. And I got it in the end, which was a cool feeling. But yeah, it was a lot of ups and downs. I'm sure you guys know the feelings, right? The feelings I had on my level 1, 2, 3, 4, it's all the same. Like it doesn't really matter. It's just you trying to push yourself to become the best writer you can be. And you know, like we all say, oh, you know, it's intrinsic motivation. Like, do this for yourself. Don't worry about the pass mark. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, I've just spent £2,000 to be here. Of course I'm worried about the pass marks. Like, it's natural to be that way.
It's to me like that last bit. So you like sort of go through the exam and you're like, oh yeah, going through it. And then it's just like, not even the last day. It's like the last 10 minutes before you figure out that you're writing down to get your feedback and if you're passed or failed.
Yeah.
For me, it was like going on the chairlift, this chair to spare up to in Avonsell. We're like watching our calf runs going down. I was like, oh yeah, completely oblivious. And then Fred just turned to me and went, this might be the one they're actually telling us. So the whole, like 20 minutes, because you know how long that chairlift is, it's just like shitting myself. I was like, right, as soon as I get off there, I'm going to just charge it down to Ash and be the first one there and not wait for anyone, which luckily I did. But it was like that whole moment of just, oh shit, I'm feeling now really ill, really like queasy and stuff, like tummy rolling up, and you're like, whoa.
Like, yeah, it's not. I mean, it's a great feeling when you do get it. Don't get me wrong. And I've been on both sides, both pass and fail, and student and trainer. Like, it's all in the same mixing pot. It feels the same. But yeah, I think it's a good thing as well, because it shows how much something like that means to you. Like, if you're feeling that strongly, like, I so want this, I need to know, I'm really nervous, and you're like physically and mentally, you're drained by that point in the week, right? Like, you've just given it everything. It is, it's kind of like a necessary evil. But I don't know if you remember, I think on the second last day or the last day, I sort of said, we had that big debrief in the cafe at the end of the second last day, and I was like, I tried to sort of, because I know exactly how it feels, and I hate how it feels. And I was like, look, this is just snowboarding. No one has ever snowboarded better when they're really tense and stressed and anxious and nervous and in a bad mood. Like, at this point, you've either got it or you don't, and just go out and have fun and ride and, like, you know, help each other out, support each other, and just get stoked. Because, like, the best progressions I've ever made on a snowboard is when I'm with my mates. There's no worries, we're just enjoying it, and like trying to tap into that feeling and like use that for my progression. Is like, it's hard to do. I get that it's hard to do, but I think that is like so important.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those days. And I think it's also when you're actually instructing, you don't think at all that you're a level 2 or level 3 or 4 instructor. You just instruct and then get really stoked that the person's progressing through, like, even if it's from a heel edge to learning how to carve for the first time, you're like, oh my God, I'm so stoked. And that whole thinking of like level 2, level what's it, it's just out there when you don't think of that anymore. You're just focusing on that end, and it's fucking sick.
Yeah. And like, even, you know, to some extent, like the technique, yeah, you ride a certain way, and Basi's definitely adapting so that it's not, people still have this notion of the Basi robot or whatever that is. Like, that's not really a thing. Like, you know, we want to just see people riding with flow, riding with style, and just it's just having that control. It doesn't need to look like a photo or a template. It just, we want to see the board working and doing the right things. And yeah, like you say, it's level 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter. It's you're just riding, and I think it always comes across when someone is like enjoying their riding, when someone's into it, when someone's just like loving it and they're in the flow. Like, you can see that so easily. Not even with like top level pro riders, just with anyone, with your average Joe, you know when they're loving it, because it's infectious, right? You see that. And then you can also, by the same token, you can see when someone's training for an exam next week, right?
They're like shitting themselves and they're just trying to focus on different bits, and you can see them like really thinking about it, and you're like, yeah, I get you. I can understand that.
Yeah,
which makes sense.
So after getting that trainer's kind of mark, Rob, you know, did you kind of start to work a bit more internationally? Like, where did you go from that after?
I was already, to be honest. Yeah, I think, I'd had quite a few seasons in New Zealand and Japan, and then after the level 4, I went to work in team where I'd spent quite a lot of time already. I knew the area, I knew a lot of the people there, and I just thought, like, it's quite funny. I think when I was about 12 years old, I went on holiday there, and I remember I was saying, oh, I'm going to live here one day. And I think my mum and dad were like, okay. But it was cool. For me, it was almost like a no-brainer. I just knew that's where I wanted to be. And Tignes kind of feels a bit like a home from home now. I never saw it as France as being like the gold standard. Like the place that people want to work. I think people have this misconception that you go all the way to then work in France. That's not what it is for me. It was like, that's where I happened to be at the time. That's where I had like a lot of friends, and I was like, yeah, cool, I'll stay here, I guess.
Yeah, you do get a lot of people, especially in like Tignes in France, and like, we've definitely interviewed a load of people in Morzine, and like, there's such a tight knit community there. It's so good to kind of see.
I think Tignes and Morzine, they do have this really cool sort of community of a lot of British riders. That's been going for years, that's been going way before I first went to Tignes, and I guess it will, well, I hope it continues. I don't know how things are going to look over the next years, but I think that's what it was for me. Like there's a 1,000 wicked resorts all over Europe, but it was just the place that felt like home. So that's kind of why I stuck with it.
Ah, sick. I kind of want to move now straight on to, the next segment in terms of Whitelines itself. I know you're mainly kind of known for being like an editor at Whitelines, and doing these amazing articles and blogs. How did you get that position? And how did you kind of really get into Anyday Media and Whitelines itself?
Actually, it was through Instagram. It's the one positive thing I have to say about social media. It was a really just totally out of the blue. Like, I just kind of set myself up for returning to France for the winter season, and I kind of moved back to Edinburgh in Scotland. And my girlfriend at the time, she was living in London, and she was like, "How do you think this could work? Like you're in the Alps, I'm in London. Like, do you reckon you could live in London?" And I sarcastically at the time said to her, like, "Yeah, I don't know, get a job at Whitelines or something." And then like 6 weeks or 2 months later, this job ad popped up, and I was like, "Oh my god, like what?" So I kind of just put my plans on hold in Scotland and just applied for the job. And it was hilarious because I genuinely had like not a lot of experience in that side of the industry, like a little bit. I'd worked in retail. I'd obviously worked as an instructor for a long time. I had like quite a few contacts through the industry with reps and brands, and I'd written a couple of features for like a uni magazine, but I was by no means a published like a writer. So my job application ended up being where I basically said, I listed the first like 5 lines of the job application were just all the things I couldn't do. So I was like, I've never used WordPress. I'm really bad with social media. I haven't added a post on Instagram for 2.5 years. I've never been paid for anything I've written, and just listed all these things. And then I was like, but on the flip side, and then kind of said, Whitelines is the mag that I subscribed to when I was like 10 years old. And it was like a kind of a window into the snowboard community for me. It like massively shaped and influenced, like I said, I went to New Zealand off the back of that Whitelines article. I was like, I understand the gear. I understand the product side of it, having worked in the snowboard asylum for like a few years. I was like, I think I can add some value. I think I could do this job. Like I can write about anything if it's to do with snowboarding. Like, just trust me on this. So I ended up getting the interview, and then I ended up getting the job, which was a real surprise. But since then it's been like 2.5 years since I started, and it's it's cool, man. Like it is a totally different side to the snowboard industry. Like you kind of see a few more of the strings. You see all the relationships between brands and media and writers and all that. And it's kind of opened my eyes to meeting a lot of really cool people I've like looked up to for years, for 20 years. Some of my heroes basically had the chance to kind of meet with them, to chat with them, have a beer with them, interview them, which is incredible. And we've got a really, really cool team as well. Like there's myself, and there's also Joy and Stella who work on the editorial side. But we still got Ed Blomfield, who was the editor for the previous 12 years. He now does the Whitelines annual, like the print mag. So he's still really involved with that, which is super cool. And then we've got Sam has moved on to work for Nidecker, but he still keeps in touch, and he still occasionally sort of writes for us. And Duffy, who also used to work there, he'll contribute some features from time to time. And then beyond that, we've got a really cool like creative film media team as well, making like cool films and so it's cool. It's a big family, and it's just nice to be, I'm here in East London, but I'm kind of surrounded by a snowboard community in itself, which is, it's pretty rad.
Yeah. Have you work in like any day media? Of course, you guys have like multiple kind of brands under your belt. Did you do any other like little bits and bobs, not just specifically for Whitelines? Did you do stuff like Mempora and all that, or was it just kind of specifically there?
I guess, yes, just for people that maybe won't understand. So Any Day Media is made up of Empora, like you said, which is like action adventure, Outdoors Mag, which is more of like a camping, hiking, hill walking magazine, and Whitelines. But there's also mags like Dirt Mag, like a pretty legendary mountain bike mag, which is kind of in limbo at the moment, I think. I'm not really sure. So we're part of Any Day Media, which is part of a larger company called the Internet Fusion Group, but we kind of operate as our own bubble of the side of things, and it's cool. We're given a lot of autonomy to. I think there's a misconception that we work with this bigger brand. It's like it's all separate in a lot of ways. It's everything that we do is kind of in house. I do occasionally write stuff for Empora, but it's just busy with Whitelines, man. Like I think I was pretty naive. I didn't realize just how much goes on behind the scenes with that. I mean, we're putting together the buyer's guides just now, so I've been like scripting for the last couple of weeks for these videos, and we've got like a whole bunch of videos going out. We've got the 100, which is like the short list selection of the best 100 products that our team and our test writers sort of deemed to be the best of the year. There's like another 300 or 400 products for the buyer's guide itself. So like the office right now is it's like being in a candy shop, man. There's like hundreds of snowboards. It's cool, but like there's a lot of work that goes into that, a lot of moving parts. So yeah, weirdly enough, like summer is actually my busiest season now. Like I look forward to the winters where it mellows out and I can go ride and I can take a bit more time off. But,
and how have you actually find kind of working in London, being a Scottish boy up in the Highlands, going into this big city in London? Like, how have you felt with kind of just integrating yourself in that kind of community and whatnot?
Yeah, are you asking if I've got friends?
If you a little bit about it depends.
Not really. No, it's cool. I think I really like it, to be honest with you, and I totally get that it's kind of at odds with the career that most of us choose to go down. I always find it really funny when I meet people in the mountains, or not even the mountains, just wherever, and they're like, tell them I live in London. They're like, "Oh, you live in London? Oh, I could never do that, mate." And I'm like, "Well, don't. I don't care." Like, I always get told that it's tough, mate. It's expensive. I'm like, it's not really any more expensive than living in the Alps, for one. But also, like, as much as I love being in the mountains, and that is kind of where I feel like at home the most, whether it's France or Scotland or wherever, there's a part of me that loves the variety and just having a bit of a change up. I think the nature of what we do, we're always moving, right? It's quite a seasonal life. You go from the north to the south hemisphere, or you're in the Alps and back home, or whatever. I quite like it. I like the contrast of being back in London. Like it's pretty different, but it works for me, I think. I'm not saying I'll live here forever, and I'm not saying I don't miss the mountains, especially after the last year, like of being in London for 12 months. But no, it's cool. It's all good. I'm into it.
I think it's good to have that sort of change going from, and I know what you mean, going from sort of one extreme to the other, going from like the mountains where it's all about, environmentally friendly and that stuff, to a bus full of like concrete jungle, and having that the change is what's the most exciting thing, going from one completely thing to different from one to the other. I think that's sort of the cool thing about it, and knowing that you can live off both of them is sick.
I know. I'm super lucky. Like I'm not under any illusions as to how lucky I got landing this job and having work in the mountains. But yeah, I mean it's I don't know. There's still a really, really big snowboard community in London. It's not like I'm the only one out here. Like everyone, I mean, it's pretty buzzing, to be honest. So yeah. And the other thing, really, like quite importantly, I guess, I feel that that time away from the mountains, as much as I like being here, it's just kind of recharging my stoke to get back there. And I think soon as I get back to the mountains, I'm all in. Like, I just love being back in that environment, and it doesn't fade over the course of a season. Like, I love being there, and I know that it's only for 5 months or whatever. So so that's the kind of I guess like another hidden bonus of living in the city.
Yeah. And going from kind of living in the city in terms of working with like Whitelines, you know, you've done a couple of decent projects. You've done a load of like decent like articles. What would be your favorite project, or what would be your favorite article you've done over the last two kind of years working at Whitelines?
I don't know. It's a good question. I think what's cool is we do the Whitelines Annual, which is like the one-off print publication every year, and that's currently under works right now. That's going to be coming out this October. And being someone who grew up reading the mag, and then I started the job where it was just online, or it was, you know, the mag had sort of been in hiatus for 5 years. I love writing, you know, features online, but there's something about it being in print. I don't know if that's me just being nostalgic.
No, you know what? I definitely get that, Rob. Like, I mean, more of a photography aspect. I love. I do want to have like prints of my own photographs that I can just whack on the wall. Thing. You know, it's like
and you know, like from the photography aspect, I guess you maybe think or agree that like with Instagram, it's just so fast. It's just every day there's just more stuff being chucked in the content bonfire every single day, and it's nice to have something that's there for posterity, like stored in place, and it's something you can go back to. So for that Whitelines Annual, the 2019-2021, I wrote a feature on like a writer's block, like how to get out of a writer's block, which ironically enough, I had like a month of writer's block putting that together. I couldn't do it, but I was stoked on that one, and just really stoked to see my name like among other names who I've looked up to and read their name, you know, like Ed Lee, Chris Moran, Ed Blomfield, of course, Duffy, Sam. Like to have a feature of my own like among that company was a really cool feeling. So I think that one, just purely to have it in print, was really nice. But then also, I guess the interviews are fun. Like that's a cool side to the job, which can be like a bit intimidating, a bit scary from time to time. But it's also a pretty cool part of the job to sit down with your heroes and chat to them for half an hour or an hour, whatever.
Have you ever fangirled over any of them before? Like,
yeah, I did. Yeah, quite a few probably. I think well, weirdly, like probably Jeremy Jones was one of the ones I was like, oh man, this is big, but then he was actually kind of boring. I was like, okay, it was just, no, he wasn't. He was cool. He was very professional. He was rad, but it was just by the end of it, I was like, he's done a million of these interviews and he's not that fussed. And yeah, I'll tell you, probably my favorite one was with the Helgeson brothers. They're on the Horse Feathers team, or like the A-Trip Horse Feathers team, and we got invited out to the Horse Feathers 30th birthday in the Czech Republic. So we got flown out and we got to hang with those guys. And like, I think the Helgesons they seem like the craziest, like raddest, wildest people in snowboarding, which like they are in terms of their riding. And Haldor definitely, like, he goes for it on a night out. But I didn't realize that like Ike doesn't drink at all. So like it was the weirdest thing. We were sitting there, and I don't drink that much. Yeah, I'm drinking right now, but I generally don't drink that much. And we were just sitting there chatting about like the fishing industry in Iceland and Scotland for like 2 hours. And I was like, this is so surreal. Like I thought these guys would be like just hanging from the rafters by now, like going absolutely crazy, having a mad party. But like, yeah, it was just nice super cool to kind of sit with these people and just chat to them, I guess.
And I bet they like, you know, having a bit of a reprieve as well, because they've done like so many of these interviews prior, and, you know, having to be able to kind of go off topic and talk about something completely different than snowboarding and their career, and having something a bit more kind of core to what they are, you know, they kind of really let out their shell, I'm guessing, from that.
Yeah, and like you can tell the ones who've obviously had the full-on media training, like if you asking Travis Rice one question about the natural selection and he filled up the entire interview slot, like 20 minutes, just gave this answer. So he knows what to do. And then other writers, you're like, you ask them the question and they go, not really. And
yeah, and
like,
that's yeah.
Okay.
Oh mate, I know where you're feeling from that.
Have you had that on the podcast? I've not listened to all of them, but have you had some where it's just like the person is?
You know what? It's been all right. I mean, I'm coming from a background from filmmaking and having commercial corporate interviews, and you know, you get the ones who are really good media trained in terms of like, they're just like, you bang it out and you're like, oh, this is great. Like, I don't like, in terms of like edit itself, when I start to do like edits for interviews, I know this is going to be good. Like, I don't have to worry too much about editing. But then you get like, of course, the ones who haven't been media trained, where they're just like a lot of a lot of kind of like looking back at their scripts, you know, short answers. You got to like really kind of like squeeze them to get like the most content out of them as you can. It's just,
yeah. I guess actually I wasn't thinking, if this is the Snowboard Instructor podcast, it'd be weird if you had people that can't have a conversation on this podcast.
To be honest,
right?
If it was like the other way around, if someone's like giving me the questions, I don't think I'd be able to talk that much, because I've not got that. You're way more talkative than I am. I'm just the sound engineer that sits oddly in the corner, sort of like moaning about why the snares like not EQ'd enough.
Yeah, you're pretty grumpy.
So, like, I don't.
Did you guys put that Highlander poster up because of me, or is that a permanent feature on your wall?
So, this is no. Yeah. So,
we totally put it up because.
So, in terms of the story, I did some work with Studio Canal, and like
cool.
they gave me a free poster, a load of free content and stuff just for working with them. And like it's basically got the Highlander poster, and I got like a 4K restoration DVD, but it's got Clancy Brown as well signature on there. So yeah, that's kind of like the story. I got it for like my dad, and I watched it.
Highlander. Actually, I've not watched it, but apparently, if you're Scottish, I've been told not to watch it. So
is that
mate?
Is that a thing?
You just gotta watch it with like a really open mind, yeah, and not worry about Sean Connery's acting in it, especially. Yeah, as long as you just keep with watching number one, you'll be fine. Just don't watch any of the sequels or anything like that. All right. Like,
all right, I'll go.
It's a good film, man. It's a good film, but I mean, me being Scottish, I don't know what kind of intricacies there might be, which might annoy you guys. But
we don't have any intricacies, man. Don't worry about it.
Then you'll love it, man. It's good, isn't it, mate? It's not as bad as Braveheart in terms of that, but yeah. So it's good, man. It's good. It's fictional.
People think they're like the same movie half the time.
Same actors, yeah.
The same thing. It's obviously different movies, but
pretty much the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, man. Awesome. I've lost my train of thought. Where were we going for this?
What was we talking about?
Yeah, favorite project blog, kind of going from there. And kind of last question in terms of the segment itself. I know you're not fully staying with Whitelines, and I definitely know you've got kind of a future to kind of go off. But what do you see in terms of Whitelines and just where do you see Whitelines and just, you know, Any Day Media and Empora? Where do you reckon they're going to go in the future? Like, what's your opinions on that?
Don't know. Global snowboard domination would be nice, but I think what's cool. I was chatting to Ed the other day on the phone. We were just talking about the Whitelines Annual and talking about some of the features and the content to put in it. And it's a UK mag. I mean, it started in Oxford like in 1995, I think it was. You know, pretty humble origins. And since then, it's become the largest snowboard website globally. Like really through that buyer's guide, I guess, is a big part of it. And yeah, like 60% of our audience comes from North America now online, which is crazy. You know, people are like, it's a UK mag, and it is. But I guess like the way that we think of Whitelines, it's like it's a UK commentary on the world of snowboarding. So yeah, we definitely want to cover the UK scene, and we want to like prop up the UK riders and you know, keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the UK, because there's so much good stuff coming out of this scene. But we are writing for a global audience, I guess, in many respects, and we're working with like global partners as well now, which is amazing, and it's cool to be a part of that. So I think it's that juggling act. We're always going to be a UK mag, and we always want to make sure we're nurturing and like paying focus to that UK scene. But at the same time, you know, we've got some pretty cool video projects in the pipeline for next year, which I can't really say too much about at this stage. But yeah, like watch the space. I think there's some cool things lined up for the coming season. So yeah, stoked to be a part of it. You said I'm not going to be with Whitelines for a while. I don't know if you know something I don't. Like I'm planning on staying for a while.
No, I'm just saying, like, in the future more than anything,
Well, they told you.
Yeah. I wasn't speaking to anyone else at Whitelines, clearly up above. No, it's all good. That's good to hear, and I hope all the best with kind of working at Whitelines, and it's a really good company, and you see them pushing like the snowboarding industry ages. You
can definitely tell the video content is starting to increase, because I'm getting like way more like, for example, YouTube, more videos of Whiteline stuff coming out, and it's always like really nice to watch to see what you guys are talking about. And
that's down to like Ryan and Mike, the sort of video media guys. They're super on it with like making these cool sets and getting this really cool of the riders out in the Alps. We've got quite a lot of those videos dropping later on this year, which should be cool.
Hey, nice, man.
I just got one more question with Whitelines. You were talking about all the gear reviews you'd been doing. Personally, what is your favorite setup then?
I'm hoping this could land me some like serious sponsorship or commercial deal. I think genuinely my favorite snowboard is the Slash ATV, which is like, it's Gigi's own brand, but it's the board that Gigi rides the most. It's just, for me, like what I really, really like in a snowboard, what I love in a snowboard is just regular full camber, like regular side cut, tiny bit of setback in the stands, but like twin flex, like no sort of bells and whistles, nothing too fancy going on with it. And that is just like such a good all-rounder. I love that board. So yeah, that's probably one. And then actually, I guess the other one for me is like the Karua shapes. Yeah, I love those boards. Again, nothing super fancy with the side cuts, or the materials are all pretty basic. I mean, it's like baking a cake, right? All these brands use the same ingredients, but it's just how you mix them together. And I think what the guys at Karua do, just their whole brand ethos actually, is just really cool. I'm into it, and the sort of the timeless graphics that don't have to be refreshed every year. So yeah, those would be my two, I think. But just my opinion. There's a lot of amazing snowboards, and like it's got to be the coolest part of that job is getting to ride them all. Like when they get sent out and we get to test them, sort of me and the Whitelines test team, and yeah, like you always want to reach for the crazy sort of battalion surfer or like some amplid carving board, and those ones are really fun. But yeah, there's just I think the one thing that's kind of opened up my eyes to the most is whatever you're bad at on a snowboard, you're bad at on all snowboards. There's no snowboard out there that fixes it. Some might help, and some might make you get away with a bit more. But like, yeah, I find myself I end up coming back to the same things with my riding. I'm just trying to focus on the board itself and how it performs rather than what I'm doing wrong with it.
Yeah, which is sort of a part and parcel sometimes. I quite like, especially with Malcolm's sort of reviewing, having an instructor reviewing a snowboard, if that makes sense. Like, yeah. Normally with snowboard reviews, I don't know if you agree on this, but sort of when you ride, you sort of want, you want to review it into a sense of, okay, I'm reviewing it for like an average person snowboarding. Like they're not technically, at the level I am, being sort of an instructor, but thinking about how would that feel on that. Do you ever sort of think about that, or?
I know what you mean, but because a lot of the riders who are testing the snowboards are instructors and coaches, and just like a really high standard of rider. But what's cool is like being instructors, like you guys know, like the sort of the mistakes that riders make. The way that a lot of riders, common habits or bad habits. You can kind of ride a board with those habits to see how it is as well. So, if you're on quite an aggressive stiff camber board and you start riding like super open, or, your back leg, or not lifting the board, whatever it may be, like you really quickly get caught out. But if you're on a soft board, big rocker, tip and tail, or triple base, like you can be like, oh, right, this is what a beginner's going to feel if they're riding this board. This is going to work really well for them. And what we try and do is it's a lot less about what I think of the snowboard, like, oh yeah, it was way too soft for me, or oh, I prefer a board that's got more camber. It's like, who is this board the perfect snowboard for? Like, who's gonna get the most out of this board, or who's gonna improve their riding or push their riding the most on this board. So yeah, I know what you mean. Like being on a super soft progressive flat rocker board might not be something that we would choose to ride as our daily driver, but knowing the kind of rider that would want that, and then kind of getting into their headspace a bit more, like take it onto the boxes and rails, or take it, like a bit more buttering and jibbing, like you very quickly get an idea of who the product's for.
Yeah. And I think having that knowledge of obviously knowing what board to talk about and stuff does help massively. Talking just to, if you've got a client or a customer and saying, let's say they want to do carving and they give you an option, be like, oh, I've got 2 boards at home, or I've got this, LibTech rocker, but then I've also got like, say, just a Arbor Westmark camber. Which one should I go for? And you'd be like, camber because of this. And then it makes it a little bit easier for them to understand why that board's better for that job. If that makes sense.
No, I totally get that. I think that's a really good skill for any instructor to have. Like, maybe a little bit overlooked actually in the sort of the pathway, but really understanding how does a camber work, how does a side cut work, all the materials in a board, do you know what the difference is between a true twin and a directional twin, and why that might help with riding on the front foot, but it's not really going to impact your switch riding that much. And yeah, being able to break all that down, it's just another string to your bow as an instructor, I guess. So I'm quite lucky that I'm getting pretty regular training with the Whitelines job, that I'm usually quite up to date with what's happening in the industry. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. And going completely from the opposite of that kind of community of working in like the city centre, going into more of the mountainside, a lot of instructors, especially high level instructors, they start up their own ski schools. Yeah, they do own their own companies and kind of make it a bit more local instead of working for a bigger company. So of course, this is where we kind of really talk about ultimate snowboards, don't we? Right? Like, how did that come around, and when did you start it? And yeah, what was the kind of origins of that kind of?
So like Ultimate Snow Sports as a company's been around for quite a long time, really. It was started up by Cy Twig, Matt Tomlinson, and Ben Arkley at the start as well. He still works there too, but Matt and Cy kind of run the school now. And Cy is a level 3 snowboarder, and Tommy also snowboards there as well, although they're both ski level 4. So they were running snowboard lessons out in Tignes, but it kind of came around, just like I say, it's a small town, it's got a close-knit community. I sort of knew those guys by the end of my level 4 sort of pathway, and just got chatting to them, and they were like, well, we'd love the potential to open up into a snowboard school as well, like have a snowboard arm to the school. And myself and my mate Bloggy, who I'd done like a huge number of the exams with, we were kind of set on setting up our own thing, right? We thought, yeah, we could get our own school in Tignes, and there's so many independents in Tignes as is. And there's something kind of cool in like that idea of having your own brand, like your own snowboard school is rad, and it's definitely still something I would like to do at some point. But at the time, for both of us, it was like, I just kind of want to get working and get riding with a school, and have like work with really cool like-minded people who've been doing this already. They've built up the brand, they've got like the whole school is there already, and we can kind of just jump in, and we had input in terms of the products that we would offer, and whatever with the social media or sort of the different packages that we put together. So we kind of got to do all the fun stuff like that, but we didn't have to worry about the running a business side of it, and payrolls and websites. That was all kind of taken care of, and they were just like, they're such sound guys that we were like, there's no advantage to trying to do this on our own. Like, every aspect of it would be better with these guys, and like, it was, without a doubt. It's been like such a cool few years working with those guys. We're like a really close-knit crew. Obviously I haven't seen them for a while, not being out there last year, but yeah, it was just kind of a natural, to be honest, it didn't even feel like a decision. It just felt like the thing that came next, kind of walked straight into it, which I'm really grateful for.
So kind of go into a bit more detail with the process of starting up this extra arm of snowboarding. Like, where did you guys kind of start off with it? Of course, you probably had the main kind of foundation clients that would come back to snowboard lessons anyway, and just kind of integrating that into, of course, doing more some teaching with you guys and whatnot. What were the changes that happened really with kind of creating its own individual aspect of the company itself.
So I guess one thing is like Ultimate Snow Sports and Matt and Si, they also have like, they run a transfer business from the airports to the resort, and they were involved in running a chalet business as well, and also the best cheese toasty bar in Europe. But anyway, so like they kind of had this sort of complete circle where they had people arriving at the airports, coming up to stay in their chalets, going to their schools. So it was myself and Bloggy had our own client base, and we had people that kind of came with us to Tignes, and then there was just sort of word of mouth, and you know, it's the way it happens in these resorts. Someone goes and picks up snowboard hire, they speak to someone at the checkout who's an instructor. Oh, that guy there is actually the one in the pub over there, go and ask him. And it just happens kind of naturally like that. But you were quite lucky in the sense that they already had like a flow of people coming into the resort through their other businesses, and because of that we could kind of like point them in the direction of Ultimate, whether it was skiing or snowboarding. And I think actually, like, you know, again, I come back to it's cool to have your own independent snowboard school. And yeah, like guys like what Dave are doing, or Dave and Barry, or you know, Ronell, Neil McNair, all these instructors who have their own school. It's really cool. It's fully rad. But like where we're quite lucky is there's a lot of people who come as a group with skiers and snowboarders, right? And they kind of just want to keep it in-house. So quite often it'll be like, I'll take the snowboarders and the skiers go with whoever, and we all meet back for lunch or at the end of the day or whatever. So having a ski and snowboard school, as much as it's not something I thought I would do when I had my level 4, it's actually been like a bit of a no-brainer for me.
And how have you found kind of working at Ultimate Snowboards? Like, what have been the best kind of lessons you've had, and like what have been the best experiences you've had with them?
Oh man, I don't know. It's every day's a trip, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think I'll tell you what I really like about them is working with Ultimate is we kind of get to do a bit of everything. So if you think about all the different exams you go through Basi or CASI, NZSA, whoever, you've got all these different skill sets, right? You've maybe got like a teaching children module if you've done the New Zealand system, or you've got the backcountry stuff, you've got the freestyle coaching stuff. I just really love the variety, and I mean, like, the variety is bonkers. In the morning I can be with like a 5-year-old on the magic carpet with a Burton Riglet, and then at lunch I've got to run back to the office, grab like 3 backcountry backpacks, head back and meet afternoon clients, and we're like bootpacking up somewhere and free riding or heli skiing in the afternoon. And like that contrast for me is, I don't know how everyone feels about it, but a lot of my mates, and especially the guys I work with, they genuinely love that variety. Like, teaching beginners is rad. I've never seen it as something that you stop doing once you hit level 3 or whatever. Like, some of the funnest lessons I've taught have been with beginners, complete beginners, who are just like frothing by the end of the day that they can snowboard. And then actually sometimes you can have someone who's like, I'm struggling to set my edge early on my toe side carve, and like, it can be a bit dry, you know, like not always. Sometimes you have like teaching Euro carve sessions or backcountry stuff is wicked, but it's the variety for me. And I think it's like what's so cool about our job, right? It's changing every day.
Cool. And in terms of like the services you do yourself, kind of, Rob, you know, what kind of services do you do at Ultimate Snowboards, and how many kind of like lessons would you do in a week and whatnot?
Oh, it changes. I guess like half term can be like booked up with kid groups, you know, so you get like a morning group of kids and an afternoon group of kids. So it can be, I'm trying to remember now, it's like we do like 7.5 hour days, maybe 8 hours in the spring once the lifts are running a bit longer. But yeah, it's generally like kind of, we'll never do less than 2 hours, because with a resort on that scale, like Tignes and Val d'Isère, you need the time to actually get to the places. And I've never personally felt like a 1 hour lesson is worth any money, to be honest. You barely got to know the student before it's time to wrap things up, you know. And yeah, it's a whole mix, you know. And then we do, yeah, like I say, we do some heli ski stuff. Splitboarding we have done, although I'm not sure if we'll be doing too much splitboarding in the future, just with the laws and whatnot. And a whole mixture. I think something else we'd like to do, there's a new Basi trainer working at Ultimate from the ski side. So we're talking about maybe trying to open some kind of like season gap course or some long-term training and exams for people who want to come out to team and get put through the level 1 and 2 maybe. Awesome.
Hey, that would be really cool. You see a load of gap courses anyway, but not really. I've not seen any in teens, have I? Really?
Teens and there's not really much gap courses that I know of that's like in that area. So that's like the market's there, and even if there is, the market's still there.
Yeah, I know they run exams there quite often, but Val d'Isère tends to run more of them. So, but the resorts are totally interconnected, so there kind of already is. But yeah, I mean, what's the harm of another one, right?
If there's demand there, might as well just go for it.
Yeah, exactly right.
Especially if teens and Morzines always have that. They have that name behind it, and
I think being high up as well, they're really snowshoe resorts, which depressingly is becoming a bigger factor to consider if you're planning a season or a holiday. So that kind of plays into their strengths for sure.
Yeah. And I do want to quickly touch upon, before we kind of move on to the last question. No, I haven't really spoken a lot about this in terms of the podcast, but Brexit itself, and it's been such a big kind of shift over the last couple of months. But how has it affected Ultimate Snowboards, and kind of what's kind of been in happening with you guys, and how have you had to deal with it?
I guess we don't really know, right? Like this season happened. It's such a weird one. I'm most of the team out there are either applying for French residency, or they have an arrangement that they'll continue to work out there. So in terms of us still being there and still teaching, I think that's fine. I think that will be resolved, hopefully quite straightforward. But who knows, man? It's just like every aspect of the industry, the seasonal workers, like the people who work in the ski hire and the restaurants, the chalets, could be really tricky for them to get out, which obviously has a knock on how many tourists go. And I don't know, is the short answer. There's been a lot of interest, and people were super keen to come out the season that we've just had. We're trying to find a way around Brexit and COVID to come out and ski. Obviously they couldn't. What I will say though, and this has kind of come from the Whitelines side of things as well, speaking to the brands about the coming winter, I think this is going to be the most anticipated winter season for a generation, at least in Europe. Maybe not so much North America, but in Europe, there's just so much stoke for people wanting to get out there and get riding again. And I think you can feel that. You can feel that energy. And I really, really hope for everyone, that the tourists, the people, the seasonal staff, the people who live out there full time, I would love to see next season just be a bumper year, hopefully no COVID setbacks. Hopefully Brexit allows people back and forth the border, and people can get a working visa or whatever. And we just have the season of all seasons to remind us how good this is, and why it's something we need to protect and keep that whole thing going. But
keep the steeds alive, man.
I'm so happy. There's never sort of a sort of thought that it's not going to happen, but that thinking about the snowboard industry sort of collapsing, I think when especially midway through COVID, it was that sort of thought in the back of my mind, shit, what's going to happen? I think it was Nitro that's doing the crowdfunding, and then offering if you could put your money towards the freelancers and the video industry, and I was chuck the money at that. And it was just I'm glad to see that the snowboard industry is building back up, and I think, as you said, with this next season coming on, it's just going to be a big boom, and everything should be hopefully back to sort of on the norm, on its way back. Maybe not there, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I really hope so. And I think if we're being honest, Brexit and COVID are farts in a bathtub or in a hot tub. They're nothing. They're not big factors when you compare it with climate change. That's the big thing, right? And actually, weirdly enough, I think what something like COVID has done is made all these brands reassess how they're going to stay in the industry. And the idea of refreshing every snowboard every year with a new graphic. Is that necessary? Probably not. Like, there's things that the whole industry needs to start adapting and changing to kind of think a bit more long term with this. So I don't know. I feel optimistic about next year. I think it's going to be a good one. I don't know. This is going to be saved here forever now, so I might have to eat my words.
Yeah, we're still in that state of limbo with Brexit at the moment. I mean, as you said, it's not that big of a deal. We'll always adapt around it, and that's something that we don't have to worry about too much. But it's thinking about, I think a lot of instructor brands that work in France and stuff have figured out a way. I think you have figured out a way with, like with residency and working around from there. It's, it's trying to find, I think, more for people that are on their level 3 and wanting to get their level 4 in Karate Pro and working in France and, thinking about, am I going to be able to do, a sort of a substitute or sort of sideline of a Euro test to, make me work in France if that's going to figure it out. I think Basi's figuring that all out at the moment, and it's just,
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to know that we've got people working on this and working in our interests. I'm optimistic that something might be a bit down the line, but I don't think it's just a sort of dead in the water. I think something good's going to come from it, I hope. I mean, not much good's come from Brexit in my opinion so far. Nothing has, but yeah, I think like there's a lot of scope for cool things to come down the line.
And speaking kind of coming down the line and kind of the subsequent kind of seasons that we're going for, specifically kind of going back to ultimate snowboarding, what do you see as the future with ultimate? Like, where do you see it going? Not necessarily in terms of COVID and Brexit, but more of like, do you see the company growing a lot more, or do you kind of see where it's at is like the peak kind of place?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's funny. So many things are based around growth, right? Like, growth is success. And actually, what I think we've realized at Ultimate, it's my opinion at least, is that we've got something pretty special, which is like, 10 or 11 instructors. We're all good mates. We all love what we do. We're all very much on the same page with like how we feel about Ultimate and what we want to, how we approach the job and do what we do. And I don't think there's nothing necessary, like, not to sound like we're not ambitious and trying to think about what's next and what else can we do that's cool. Like, we're always thinking of new products and new ways to adapt the school and tweaks to make and services to offer, but it's certainly not based around any idea of growth. Like, we like having this family, and I think that's what makes it so special, and that's why a lot of people like to come back, because they know us, they get really familiar with all the instructors, and we so I think, if I'm being honest, like, maybe this is selfishly speaking, if you speak to Matt or Sai, maybe they're planning some European pan-European snow school. I don't know, but from my perspective, I hope it doesn't change too much, because I think actually what we've got is wicked. Like, I couldn't ask for much to change, to be honest.
Yeah, and definitely, I agree with that in terms of, like, you see those, like, you want to support the local businesses more than how, especially with like, this current climate and how it's kind of gone on. You really want to help those kind of businesses out that are a bit small and intricate. And yeah, like you were saying, like, I fully agree. You get to meet the same people you saw the other day, and you can like really build like a good kind of relationship with those clients, can't you? And it's going to keep that retention.
I should stress that Ultimate, actually, we are one of the bigger schools in team for UK schools. Like, a lot of people work as independents, just one or two of them. So in some respects, we're actually quite big. But then compare that to obviously the ESF or whatever, and we're just a dot on the radar. But I don't know. It feels like a kind of like a close family.
Yeah, ESF is like their national, really, ski school, isn't it?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah,
we're not.
Because if you're comparing them to some bunch of English people coming around, then although I'd say I'd totally choose an English ski school than an ESF for snowboarding teaching, because I think because how they work is they're very much more ski focused, and sort of the snowboarding is sort of on the side.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure with all the details. There's some really, really good snowboarders at the ESF, wicked riders, and I'm sure great teachers as well. But yeah, I think what you're referring to, like the pathway, the system is quite different. And I think, yeah, that's where Basi had been great at kind of carving out this niche of British level 4 instructors working in France. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I remember reading on the the latest Basi newsletter in terms of Brexit, kind of talking about how we were actually, to be fair, we were a lot more favourable than the locals, and which is quite good because we had those specific qualifications than just being kind of doing snowboarding because we're a really high level ski instructor. And that was really cool to kind of see. And even though with the shift of what's happening, I think that's still going to be the case, even though it's not as recognised as much. Hopefully for the future, but it's definitely good to see for sure, Rob.
Yeah, no, nice one.
And moving straight on to the last question, buddy. Thanks so much for kind of being on the podcast.
Oh, pleasure, boys. No worries.
Can we kind of go from the last question? What makes a great snowboard instructor in your opinion?
Yeah, this is the one question I did have a think about because, I probably can't give you one word or one sentence answer, and I don't want to go down the route of, like Dave said, of becoming super deep and philosophical about it. A really practical one is just being adaptable. And I think for me, that was something I realized very quickly out the doors, like after the level 1 and 2 and my first few jobs and first few seasons, was there is no kind of formula to teaching a lesson. There's no template. And if you're teaching the same template day in, day out, like you've done something wrong at some point, because that's not what the job is about. Like there's so many variables, and like really the two biggest ones that you're always adapting to are like the weather and the people, and they're changing day by day and hour by hour. It's not about what you bring to it, it's about what you can see, what you're reading in front of you, and always adapting for the best outcome of that. And in your writing as well, like it's how we're kind of taught as we go through the system to be adaptable to different conditions. As icy, bumpy, piste, powder, whatever, that needs to come across in how you teach. I think that's super important, that you're just aware of all the different moving parts and how you can get the best session across for that learner to be like mega stoked to the end and want to keep going. Because ultimately, like, we know how good it is, right? We know we wouldn't be doing this job if we didn't. Like, there's very few jobs where you want to do it again on your day off. Like, accountants aren't waking up on Sunday like, oh, maybe I'll do another tax return. But like, we love it, we'll do this every day that we can. So there's obviously something great about it, and it's for us to put that across, and for us to kind of make that resonate with the learner. So being adaptable. And then I guess the other point which that tied in with was like how you create that rapport or that connection with the people that you're teaching or assessing or coaching, whatever it may be. Like, in fact, that's kind of, we're talking about what I did for the written paper about nonverbal communication. I think if you can find a way to connect with anyone, because you meet so many different people from so many backgrounds, right? And like, you're not always going to get on great with everyone, but being able to sort of try to create that rapport and just get to know them. Why are they there? Like, what do they want from the session? It's not about what you're bringing to it, it's what they want from it, and you have to sort of find that, search for it, So I think those two kind of tie in quite nicely. And then the last one, the third and final one for me, I think, is like, if I look through from my first ever snowboard lesson, which I think I mentioned at the start, that snowboard coach I had, Hugo, on the Cairngorms, when I was like 10 or 11 years old, I can still remember things that he did or the way that he coached that group that I use today. And then the same goes for like Ben on that level 1, or like watching people ride when I was in New Zealand, who I thought were just incredible riders, or going through the exams with my mates and seeing how they run sessions and see how they ride. Like, you've got all this amazing, all these amazing influences around you. It's such a cool environment to live and work in. and you just want to be a sponge, I think, and soak it all up and take everything that you can, the good and the bad. If you get really shitty feedback from a trainer and it bums you out, think about how it bums you out. And if you're going to be giving a student feedback, don't do it like the trainer just did. Figure out a way to get the message across. Or, equally, like if you've seen an instructor or whoever, like just get the energy, just lift the energy in the group, and all the riders are buzzing, and you see the riding step up a level. Like, how did they do that? Tap into that and use that, because I think, we're so fortunate to just be surrounded by like lots of influential people and cool inspirational stuff. So take as much of that in as you can.
That's a great last question to kind of work off, Rob. Let's wrap it all up. Where can we find you? What's the best place to contact you? And
I don't know. Am I going to get a barrage of like trolls now?
Nah, mate.
Hopefully not.
I think find Whitelines is probably the easiest place to find me. Drop us a line on there, or through the Ultimate Snowboarding Instagram. I'm not here to sell anything, boys. I'm here to celebrate. It's all good.
I like it. I wish we had clinker glasses. But it's great.
Good beer.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rob.
Thank you.